In recent years, ATU International has assisted dozens of locals in running successful contract campaigns, saving pensions, extracting unprecedented safety commitments from employers, and winning significant wage increases for members, all while strengthening the union's place in members' lives and in the life of the communities we call home. In this presentation, we distill the core concepts at the center of ATU's contract campaigns into quick, easy-to-follow steps. This is not a campaign in a box, but it will help you think through what a contract campaign should look like in your local and to begin planning. There's no guaranteed way to win a campaign for a better contract, but there are guaranteed ways to lose one, and that's by not taking these critical steps. Step 1. Start yesterday. By far the biggest obstacle for most local unions in launching a contract campaign is that they have waited until bargaining breaks down, long after the CBA expired, and when members are already frustrated. While it's never too late to launch a campaign, it's also never too early. If your CBA has yet to expire, you're in the ideal place to begin planning a campaign. If you haven't already, begin thinking of your upcoming negotiations in campaign terms. Every day that you wait costs your local more money, you as an officer or a member more time, and your members more sacrifices at the table. It's important to remember that the entire point of a contract campaign is that it's a long-term effort that may mean changing the way your local operates and changing the way you bargain. At the end of the day, a campaign is all about changing the conditions for bargaining to strengthen your hand at the table. Step 2. Engage your members. The source of a local union's power is not in the expertise, officers, legal counsel, or outside experts bring. It is in an informed, engaged, and mobilized membership. Before contract campaign planning starts, you need to know what your members expect. You do this by visiting every property and every shift. Mechanics, bus operators, cleaners, clerical staff, paratransit workers, every group has unique concerns that if left unaddressed will take the wind out of your sails. During these property visits, you should take notes on what members talk about the most. You should also collect their cell phone numbers and emails so that you can create a rapid response contact list that keeps members informed and ready for action. When you encounter members who care deeply about the fight, you should take note and organize a one-on-one meeting with them later. How can they help bring more coworkers into the campaign? You should also create a simple contract survey that officers, stewards, and activist members can distribute and collect. These results should be compiled and shared with the membership at an upcoming meeting. It helps inform bargaining, but it also helps members understand what their coworkers in other locations care about. Bringing members in early will keep the local united and focused throughout the campaign. Step 3. Know your allies. In the 21st century, transit worker contract campaigns are rarely successful when we go it alone. Transit work is by definition a public service, and the way workers are compensated and treated directly affects those who rely on this service, our riders. You can meet riders at transit stops, but many are also already organized, either as members of other unions, as congregants in a faith organization, or as rider advocates. If you only reach out to these allies after your contract campaign breaks out, you're being a bad ally. You should maintain contact with them before, during, and after a campaign. And you should also listen. What are their issues? What fights do they have coming up? Where do you have common ground? Step 4. Know your issues. By engaging your members and allies, you already know a lot about what issues bubble up to the surface. You also know, based on prior bargaining sessions in previous years, what the boss cares about and where you'll have the toughest time negotiating. Bringing these all together into an easy-to-understand message is key. For example, the boss is worried about high turnover. Your members are demanding higher wages, and riders are complaining about declining service quality. These are all easy to tie together because we know that low wages lead to higher turnover, and higher turnover leads to poorer service for riders. Painting this picture for the public is key to pressuring the boss into doing what's right. Step 5. Know your targets. If we don't know who can deliver on our demands, we will never see them realized. Knowing who to hold accountable is key to running a successful contract campaign. Unfortunately, many leaders think the only person that matters is the company lawyer sitting across the bargaining table. In reality, most decisions on fundamental contract issues happen far above that person's head. If you're negotiating with a company lawyer, he is usually shuttling proposals between the table and the company or agency CEO. That CEO, in turn, is responsible for delivering a contract that meets the goals of his or her board of directors or elected officials who appoint him or her. The buck stops somewhere, and it's critical that you figure out where. It's also important to realize that there are two types of targets, public and private. Public targets are the people you name and blame, the person whose name and photo will be on the flyers you give to riders, who ultimately is at the top of the management chain. Your private targets, on the other hand, are the people who can influence your public target. If your system is run by a private contractor for a city transit system, your public target is likely the transit system CEO or the politician, like a mayor, who hired the private contractor. How much does this mayor or CEO make? What have they done in previous jobs? Do they have aspirations for higher office or a transit job in a bigger city? Are they attacking your pension because they're worried about finances, or are they doing it because they hope to bolster their reputation as, say, a fiscal conservative or a hard-charging agency head? The more you know about your public target, the easier it is to find private targets that can influence them. You'll likely find that your transit system CEO sits on several nonprofits boards where maybe one of your community allies also sits. Or that your mayor is planning to run for Congress and will need the Labor Federation's endorsement later. If that's the case, you'll want to talk to your community and labor allies about delivering a message to treat the union fairly at negotiations. Step 6. Plan strategically. You've engaged members and you know what they expect. Really, steps 1 through 5 were all about good preparation. You know what your allies want, what kind of resources they have to put into the fight. You've looked at the issues and figured out where yours align with the riders and the general public's. You've done your homework on your targets and figured out where they're weak and where they're strong. Now comes the most important part, which is putting it all together into a plan of action. The key to a successful campaign is coordination with bargaining. If campaign leaders and bargaining leaders aren't coordinating and benefiting from each other's work, the campaign will fail. There's no point in organizing a big rally the day before bargaining if your bargaining committee isn't going to mention it the next day. And there's no point in making progress at the table today if your campaign doesn't know you're making progress and brings too much heat tomorrow. The key to a sustainable campaign is escalation. That means steadily growing in boldness and numbers week to week. If you start off with a rally with 50% of your membership and it gets smaller every day, you're de-escalating. You look weaker every time you show up. You want to start strong but leave enough room to grow stronger. So what does a campaign look like? What does a campaign that is successful and coordinated with bargaining and sustainable and escalating week after week really look like? On week 1, you start with step 2 described earlier. Hit the properties and engage your members. Collect their phone numbers. Find the best activists in your property. In the second week, you might organize a telephone town hall, which is a live telephone call with all of the members you have phone numbers for. You'll update them on bargaining and the plan of action for the weeks ahead. In week 3, you'll mobilize members to leaflet riders at key transit stops. Maybe you'll have members in the break room calling a public target, say an elected official, to tell them you need their help. In week 4, you'll organize a mass demonstration outside of the workplace or the agency headquarters, and you'll invite the media. By then, you'll have engaged dozens, maybe hundreds of members, and have your turnout machinery in operation. In week 5, you'll escalate even further, perhaps with a small picket outside of the boss's house. In week 6, you'll begin organizing a transit town hall with your allies and advertising it to the community. The goal here is that every week that passes without a settlement, the boss's mess becomes his boss's mess and her boss's mess. And soon the general public and everyone else is fed up that the CEO can't keep his or her house in order, is abusing workers, and whose decisions are harming riders. Step 7, mobilize your members. Now that you have a plan of escalation that places increasing pressure on the boss week after week, it's time to make it work. No amount of planning matters if you're not continuously mobilizing your members. Because a plan of escalation by definition starts small, you don't have to worry about getting 100% of your members to your first big meeting or big action. Start with your board, your stewards, those key activists you meet during property visits. If you can only mobilize 2% of your members, that's fine. Instead of a rally, mobilize them to attend and speak at an agency board meeting. Take a photo of that action, put it on a flyer, and ask everyone who showed up this time to ask 5 coworkers to show up the next time. It's critical that this turnout machinery that you build already, comprised of property visits, member-to-member conversations, texts, emails, bulletin board posts, stays strong until you win. Step 8, engage your riders. Once you have members on the move and taking action, it's critical that part of your campaign involve connecting them with riders. Every week that goes by without members meeting riders at a transit stop with flyers and friendly conversation is a week that your boss has free rein to manipulate how they think about you and your contract. Even if your contract fight is about the pension and you can't find an easy way to make it relevant to a transit rider who has none, they will appreciate and many will actually support your fight. After all, they are more than just bus riders. They're people working toward a retirement or with an elderly family member struggling to make it on a fixed income. Also, don't stop at just leafleting riders. Get their contact information. Identify those who would be willing to stand with you publicly. Step 9. Own the news. Some of the best campaigns have gone down in flames because their leaders failed to pull back the curtain and let the world see what was happening. They bargained with blackouts, forcing members to rely on rumors and, even worse, gossipy supervisors and bosses to tell them what's going on at bargaining. Or they let the boss shape the public narrative so that allies and riders were primed to oppose anything the union said later. You can prevent this by owning the news. Give regular bargaining updates to your members right after bargaining sessions. Send your allies weekly emails so they know the boss's latest shameful proposals and what actions are coming up next. Update your rider leaflets to correct any false claims the boss may be making publicly. And do not forget the media. Love them or hate them, newspapers and television shape what most of your neighbors think. If you're ignoring reporters or don't have a designated spokesperson, they're going to get their information from only one place, the boss. And that guarantees a bad story in the morning paper. Step 10. Last but not least, reevaluate and repeat. Campaign plans are constantly changing because members, the boss, and the public are constantly reacting. Your initial plan will likely cover a few weeks or a couple of months, but you'll need to maintain enough flexibility to ratchet up or down the pressure depending on bargaining. Sometimes you'll take actions your local has never taken before, and people may feel uneasy or unsure how to interpret what just happened. After each rally, demonstration, or leafleting, spend 5 minutes with people who came out, get their feedback, and adjust it. If you think people may have left feeling a little deflated, get back in the shops and in the garages, or update the leaflet to help raise morale again. Finally, and most importantly, if an approach isn't working, scrap it. There's no sense staying married to an idea that's not yielding any results. But if an idea is working, put the pedal to the metal and do not stop until the boss concedes.